A failing grade. 100 days into the second Trump administration, nearly half of all Americans, 45% to be exact, believe that Donald Trump deserves an F for the way he has handled the presidency. That is according to a new poll from NPR, PBS News, and Marist. And if you look under the hood, the numbers, they are even worse for Donald Trump. Just under half of all independents give the president an F. And just 54% of his own political base, Republican voters, would give him an A grade. NPR reports that, quote, it's driven by views of how he's handling the economy. The first 100 days of Trump 2.0 have been defined by dramatic disruption, and there has been a lot of it. The gutting of federal agencies, a reorienting of the country's place in the world, a government at war with universities and law firms and Trump's political critics. But the first 100 days has also seen the emergence of a political vulnerability that Donald Trump did not really have in the first Trump administration. And Donald Trump, well, he has no one to blame for it but himself. He started the trade war with China and with Canada and with Mexico and practically every country and island here on planet Earth. According to the Yale Budget Lab, consumers face an effective tariff rate of 28%. That is the highest since 1901. The conservative-leaning Wall Street Journal now warns that the tariffs could be Trump's undoing. The editorial board writes that, quote, presidential second terms are rarely successful, and on the evidence of his first 100 days, Donald Trump's won't be different. The president needs a major reset if he wants to rescue his final years from the economic and foreign policy shocks he has unleashed. Mr. Trump was elected to control inflation and raise real incomes, but tariffs do the opposite. It's a mistake to think the tariff damage is only domestic. The willy-nilly assault on friends and foes has shaken global confidence in U.S. reliability. Voters reelected Mr. Trump in part because they remembered fondly his first-term economy. This term, he is indulging his trade and foreign policy obsessions, and the early results are negative. He'll fail unless he heeds the warnings. Team Trump does not appear to be heeding the warnings, at least not today. The administration began its 100th day attacking Amazon over reporting by Punchbowl News that it was going to show how much Trump's tariffs would be adding to the price of every product. Here's what White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt had to say about that reporting.
I will take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon.
A hostile and political act showing the import duties at checkout would have made it crystal clear exactly who was paying Trump's tariffs. That would be you, me, the American consumer. In response to the Trump administration's attacks, Amazon released a statement saying, quote, the team that runs our ultra-low-cost Amazon Hall store considered the idea of listing import charges on certain products. This was never approved and not going to happen. A fight with Amazon and multiple warning signs about tariffs revealing Donald Trump's political Achilles heel is where we start today. Staff writer for The Atlantic and MSNBC political analyst Ashley Parker is here, plus MSNBC columnist and author of the newsletter To the Contrary, Charlie Sykes, and anchor and correspondent for Bloomberg News, David Gura, in Ottawa, Canada, covering their elections. It is good to see you all. David, we're going to talk about what is happening where you are in Ottawa in just a few minutes. But first, let's start with the unease over the economy, the cloud that's now looming over Donald Trump, our politics. What is the prevailing Wall Street view on Trump's tariffs at this moment?
Well, Wall Street is still looking for some sense of certainty from this White House, and it's gotten none over these last 100 days. If you look at the tariffs policy in particular, there's been starts and stops, pauses. All of this is adding to some unease about the direction of all of this, where it's headed. And so we've seen obviously dramatic market moves here over the last few months. Those have continued. And I should say it's not a sign of a healthy market if the market shoots up by 1,000 points, just as it's not if it goes down by 1,000 points. That's giving you an indication here that what Wall Street's looking for actually is some sort of concrete deal. And there can be all kinds of happy talk about progress made on one deal or another, or talks that may or may not be taking place. But until something is actually codified or signed, Wall Street is not going to be happy enough to have confidence in the direction of this economy, the direction of where the White House is going here. And I think just looking back on these last 100 days, that is the overarching message on both Wall Street and Main Street. A White House pursuing economic policies that aren't resonant with either constituency, the president doing things that he hasn't fully explained, both to those high-level investors and to just regular folks wondering why he's doing what what he's doing, Alicia.
So, Ashley, in light of that reality, which David laid out so clearly, you still have a president that was really doubling down on this idea of tariffs. You spoke with him just yesterday, and you report this. Trump pushed back on the notion, popular among some Wall Street analysts, that financial turmoil, plummeting markets, the threat of a recession, a weakened dollar would cause him to roll back his tariff policies. Quote, "It always affects you a little bit," he said, but there's no red line, no certain number at which he would feel compelled to change course. Why the commitment to something that he can see in the numbers is not resonating?
Right. He told us that. And one thing that was interesting was the first time he actually did change his tariff policy, or at least do this 90-day pause, which we're in the middle of, was when the bond markets went haywire. So he told us, there's not a number. I don't really have a red line. I can stomach a tremendous amount of pain. That said, the first time we saw push come to shove, in this case, he did have a red line, and it was the bond markets. But as to why he would say this, another thing he told us when we were in the Oval Office with him last Thursday was he said, look, he just said, I believe this. He said, I have believed this in my gut for 35 or 40 years, this idea that America is getting ripped off, getting taken advantage of, that we're getting a bad deal. And for a president who is not particularly ideological, this is one of his few core political policy beliefs. And I think that helps explain why, on the whole, broadly, he is so dug in on tariffs.
Okay, so Charlie, let's just go with that, right? The president says this is something he believes. He believes it in his core. As we know, there's sort of a white paper that gave way to all of this about the potential for restructuring global markets, how that would require these tariffs. The problem is, he hasn't actually stuck to the plan as it would need to be followed, even in the theoretical, right? It would have to have been targeted in terms of the countries they were going after. It would need to have had carrots and sticks that accompanied the tariffs, and he would have need to stay the course, not imposing tariffs, rolling them back, imposing them, rolling them back. The bad math we've seen out of his own administration, where they themselves could not tell us what the tariff rate on China was. He may have the belief. He does not have the discipline to follow the plan necessary, even if you theoretically believe it could be effective.
Yeah, and that might be a problem, won't it? This is, as Ashley points out, this is one of his consistent through lines. He's had a fetish about tariffs forever. But also, this is a president who wants to project strength. He wants to have people think that he is a master negotiator who never blinks. But of course, he's already blinked, and he will probably blink again. But what is interesting is the way in which he has cut himself loose, both from the economic experts and from all the Wall Street folks who had really talked themselves into thinking that he was just bluffing, that these were just negotiating ploys. And now they're looking around going, none of this makes sense. The math does not add up. They contradict themselves on an almost daily basis. And they have this massive uncertainty hanging over them. And they know that the worst is yet to come. There's almost this tsunami heading toward the West Coast ports, where they're saying, look, these shipping containers are not coming from China, or they're coming empty. You have the longshoremen who are saying, look, please take the tariffs off, because we're going to have this massive hit across the board. Trucking companies are experiencing this. So the reality is that even he's taken a hit in public opinion, but the economic pain has not yet been felt, but it is coming. What I also think is interesting is the way the public opinion has turned on all of this, because, this was a big issue in the 2024 campaign, but a lot of voters shrugged it off because they did not take Trump seriously or literally. And you get the sense that right now, though, a lot of voters, swing voters, are thinking, you know what, maybe he is serious about these things. Maybe we ought to take him literally and seriously. And this poses a real danger to my job, my community, my business, and my 401k.
Right. I mean, Ashley, to speak to Charlie's point about the fact that we have been warned that shipping containers are not fully packed, that Long Beach is not seeing the traffic that they normally see at the port, that you have the CEOs of companies like Target and Walmart calling this president and saying, Mr. President, 2 weeks, there may not be sufficient goods on the shelves. Consumers are going to start coming to our store, and they're not going to have some of their basic needs met. You then have the reporting from today about Trump calling Jeff Bezos Bezos, saying that Amazon was considering showing the cost of tariffs on individual products. Why is this reporting about Amazon generating so much reaction all the way to the presidential briefing room?
Well, again, Donald Trump's argument on tariffs is basically that tariffs are a purely good thing and there will not be. I mean, one thing that has been interesting is he has admitted in a way that he typically does not a few times, there may be a little bit of pain. We need to take the long view, which is something, he's very impatient. He's often focused on winning sort of the day, the minute, the news cycle. But he has shown a little willingness to say to Americans, there might be a little pain for long-term gain. That said, he's largely dismissed that and papered over it. And the idea of Amazon showing, for instance, that this thing that used to cost X now costs Y, $10, $20, depending, higher, that is making voters, including many who voted for him, understand exactly the effects of tariffs and understand exactly that pain, and it's pocketbook pain, that you can talk to Democrats and Republicans that decided this past election. That is why people chose at their core Donald Trump over Joe Biden, because they thought he would be better for the economy. And so the economy, as it ever was, is always such a deep political issue that Donald Trump knows he does not want to be blamed for a bad economy, and more viscerally than a bad economy, sort of daily rising prices.